There are 5 pieces of advice that I wish would have been told to me as a dungeon master a long time ago. And today I'm going to give you those pieces of advice, and a lot of people aren't going to like them. But at the same time, if you're a new dungeon master, if you're a veteran dungeon master, stay tuned and we'll run through them. So let's get right on into what it is that I wish I would have known in the beginning. The rule of 50 is the most important rule in Dungeons & Dragons, and what it states is this. The game is played with the d20, right? We all know this. You roll the d20, it tells you success or failure. The rule of 50 is this. An 11, a DC 11, is a 50% chance. If someone has an armor class of 11, you need to roll an 11 or higher, assuming you have no proficiency and no bonuses, right? You have nothing. It's just a raw die. What's on the die matters. Well, if it's a skill check, a DC 11 means an unskilled person with no bonuses has a 50-50 chance at rolling an 11 or higher. And why is it 11? Why is it not 10? 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. 10 opportunities on a die, as 1 through 10 would be a failure. There is no 0 on a d20. So, understanding that 50% rule as a dungeon master allows you to think on your feet. It doesn't matter so much when you're looking at things, but if you're going up and you're saying, hey, I've got a party and I'm trying to put a monster up against them and they don't have really a real strong to hit, yeah, they're early, they've got a +2 proficiency modifier, their stats are fairly low, so they only got like a +4 to hit. Well, that means an AC 15, 4 plus 11 equals 15 would be their rule of 50. So if they attack that monster, they have a 50% chance to hit on a 15. All of a sudden, if they have an AC of 20, that now becomes a 25% chance to hit. So the rule of 50 allows you a very quick chance to see where the players are going to have a 50-50 chance. So on the fly, if something's happening and you need to say, hey, let's go ahead and do this, and you need to come up with the DC of a skill check, and you want them to have a better than 50 chance. Your rogue has, he's got a +3 dex with a +2 proficiency bonuses, gives him a +5. Piece of cake. That means a DC 16 check would be a 50-50. Well, I want to make sure that he has a better chance. So that would be DC 11. And so that's one of those things where I always make sure to give my players the opportunity to hit or miss based upon what's happening. Now, a lot of people don't like this because, well, you are effectively deciding the DC based upon the likelihood of the party. You're right. When I'm improvising, I'm not putting something there on the fly. I need to know, do I want the party to succeed or do I want them to fail? Both are going to be a narrative success. I have that in my head, but I would like the players to make sure they have their agency about them. So I adjust that DC saying, hey, a DC 16 is a 50-50. Let's make it a DC 13. Give them a little bit better of a chance than 50-50. It allows you as the dungeon master to quickly make up DC and save throws that you may need to have the players make, but you want to make them not easy, not hard, but balanced for the party because you still want there to be some tension on the table. It's a great rule that took me a long time to learn. So just remember, an 11 with no modifiers is a 50% chance. All you have to do is take the player's modifiers, add it to the 11, and that gives you your rule of 50. Anything lower than that, it's easier than a 50-50 chance. Keep that in mind the next time you're winging your skill checks. Everything in Dungeons & Dragons is decided by the dungeon master. This may not sound like a tip or trick, but it is. As the dungeon master, you have the final say. Your creativity on the table and the information that you give the players is all they have to go on. When you learn that, you'll learn that your players are reacting to you. If you don't give the players anything to react to, they'll stumble around. But they will react to everything you give to them. Meaning, if you describe the desk in the corner with exquisite detail and nothing else, where are your players going to go? The desk. Now, there's always the exception to this rule. There's always the player that's out there that doesn't want anything to do with the information you're giving them, but that's not how it normally works. What you describe to your players is what they react to. So if you don't describe something to your players and your players don't find something that you needed them to find in order to move the story forward, or that way, well, that's on you as the dungeon master. And that's okay. Understand what I'm saying. Be the DM that gives your players the right things to interact with when it's related to a story. Now, the magical item that's hidden in a room that the players choose not to investigate, they will never find that magical item. They will never know that it's there because you will never tell them that it's there, because that is part of dungeon mastering. That's part of being in the game. You put the item there, they didn't investigate, they'll never know. Now, later on, maybe they meet a mage that talks about the magical item that they decided to put in that drawer of that place that they went. Maybe the players choose to revisit and run into a thief that's in the process of stealing that item. Remember, just because you put something there now doesn't mean you can't tell the players later on if you want them to go back. And remember, the players are reacting to what you give them. You can always give them a rumor about a place they've already been if you need them to go back. Then it's up to the players to react to that. Food for thought. There is no such thing as over prep. There is no such thing as under prep. There's the amount of prepping that you need when it comes to any TTRPG. If anyone tells you never over prep, there is no such thing as over prep. There's no such thing as under prep. They're all wrong, because you can over prepare depending on what you're trying to accomplish. Me as a dungeon master, when I originally started, I prepared a lot. I needed a lot of preparation. I needed to have stat blocks. I needed to have monsters. And when you're prepared and your party goes over here, well, that change is what I learned to become less prepared, but more prepared in the bigger things. So what does all that mean? How do you prepare? Well, what are you good at? Lean into your strengths as a dungeon master. Me, I prepare the world. I prepare the big things, the things that are happening around the players, so that way I can always inform them of what's going on. You know, the king has moved in. There's guards all across the street. The guards now respond. I've set the thing up. There's a religion that's in town, right, that's now pushing their religious devices of purity and trying to get people to not sin and going through purization and purity filters. And, you know, they're being super aggressive about it. But the guards don't care because they're just there to collect taxes. Okay, I've set that. Now, the players, depending on what they do and what they react, I'll throw hooks at them, right? Depends on why they're there. The thing is I prepare the big pictures because I can come up with monsters on the top of my head. I've built enough now to where I don't even need stat blocks. My monsters, I can come up with something completely random, a skeleton that basically has ironclad arms and ironclad things with shields and spikes, and all of a sudden it's this skeletal zombie or a skeleton golem made out of iron. And it doesn't matter what the stats are because I'll write them down as we go. I know what needs to be a plus to hit because I've played long enough, so I don't have to prepare that anymore. A new dungeon master may need stat blocks, and they may need balanced encounters. They don't kill their party out, doing research on how would I do damage this party without killing them. That's what you need to do. Preparation is about you. What I can tell you is this. I encourage people to get to a point in their dungeon mastering where they can prepare with bullets, big ideas, and have stat blocks that they can reskin quickly. Those are the fastest ways to do things, where I'll have a stat block geared towards the party. Now, that stat block is going to be bandits, but they decide to go to a crypt. Well, that stat block and that encounter are now skeletons. Same exact encounter. I just said they're skeletons instead of bandits. That's all. I said they're going to go and fight a basilisk in the forest. They go to the ocean. That basilisk just became a rock shark. Same stat block, but now it swims. That's a reskin. I rename it, I reflavor it, I put it in front of the players because that encounter was one that I balanced for those players. So keep that in mind. There is no such thing as over prep or under prep. There's the amount of prep that you need. Focus and prep what you're not good at coming up with on the fly. And if you're running a campaign, sometimes prep is great because your players are on board. They're on board with going in the direction you have planned. And there's nothing wrong with that either. If you give your players magic items, be ready for them to break the game. That's it. That's the only thing I wish people would have told me. Be ready for it and let it happen. Also, don't be afraid to give magic items limited use. Magic items do not have to be forever. They can have limited use. They cannot recharge all the time. Their recharges can happen slower. Do not be afraid to give the players a magical items. Encourage them to use them or encourage the magical items to fade away if they're not used. The thing is a lot of players hoard magic items because they don't come up very often in a game. They'll sit there with that potion of giant strength because they never know when the next one's going to come around. I give my players more magic items than they can physically carry on their body. I overwhelm them and then expect them to use and then just ramp up the difficulty of the encounters. The thing is if magical items serve no purpose and the players never have to use them, they always hold on to them, and then when they do need them, they fail to use them. Don't be afraid to give your player magical items. Don't be afraid to give them one-use items and lots of them. Encourage them to use them, letting them know that, hey, this world is filled with magic. You're always going to come up with magical items, and you'll always be able to replace most of them. And so then put them in situations where those magical items would benefit them. You'll be amazed at how quickly the players adapt and use those magical items if they know that's not just going to be out. Don't let your players exist in a vacuum is a tip that I wish would have been told to me, meaning this. As a dungeon master, if I gave them a tip a long time ago, a hint, when they went into a room and now they don't remember it, I don't necessarily make them rely on their notes. I tell them, remember in this room, you guys encountered this with the triangle. Oh, yeah, I remember that. There's nothing wrong with that. Your players are not going to dislike you for it. I've never been upset where Dungeon Master reminds me of something that we forgot about. If it was something that was very apparent, that it was told, bring it back up to the players. You do not have to allow them to exist inside of a vacuum only on their own notes. Now, if you're playing a more adversarial game where that's something that your players like to do, sure, absolutely. But remember, there is no right or wrong way to play Dungeons and Dragons, so I encourage you to help them. Help your players be successful. Help the players remember the puzzles, and if they're not getting progress and they start getting frustrated, give them a hint or tip. For some reason, Dungeon Masters think they can't help the party. They can only supply them or provide them with what's in front of them, and you don't have to. You can always help your party. You can always help them into a winning position. Suggest things that may help them win. If you had a certain way that you thought an encounter can go and it's going poorly, remind them, there is that ledge above you at the staircase that would give you a height advantage, and then you also have the trenches beside you. So keep in mind everything that's going on. Oh, I forgot about that. Get the archer up there. Those small things make the world of difference, and they don't take away from gameplay, unless you have decided that it does ahead of time as a group. No wrong or right way. But the players don't have to exist within a vacuum. Keep that. Never tell your players what they missed and never let them behind the screen. This is a rule that I wish somebody would have told me when I first started, because I used to be excited about sharing all the cool things that I had planned. But what happens is this. When your players miss something and you're like, oh, if you would have gone into this room, you guys would have found this magical item. All of a sudden, that will forever infect the players. They will now search every single room, top in and top out, because they missed that magical item. Don't ever tell them what they missed. Don't ever tell them the monster, how they could have beaten that monster. Don't let your players see the tricks you're using. They'll know them. They know they exist. But the moment you as a dungeon master share that they exist and how you use them, the magic is gone. And it will forever be gone for that campaign. Now, when you start a new campaign, there's something about it where you get to wash your hands of all of that dust. But don't share the magic item they missed. Don't tell them how you dropped the party's, the big boss's hit points because it was going to launch on them. Don't tell them you fudged a dice roll. Don't tell them that you upped a monster's hit points because they were doing too much damage. Do not tell them the things you do as a dungeon master to create the wonderful situations they experienced. Keep doing them all. Keep surprising your players. Keep doing amazing things as a dungeon master, but never let your players into your mind. Share those things with other dungeon masters that are not your players. Dungeon masters will revel in it with you, and your players never have to know. And all the players that watch my videos, I feel like I let them down, but don't ever do that. And guys, as always, thank you for joining us. Like, subscribe, comment below, and as always, we will see you next time.